take a moment and think about how we were enjoying our life before this pandemic began. We were not worried to go into a shopping center or a grocery store. We were not worried to go to a bus station or a railway station or the airport. We didn't even think about it. Yet all of a sudden, life turned upside down. It's been months we have not been to the bus station or train station or the airport. Some of us have been separated from family for a long time, and some of us has lost a job and a livelihood also. Yet life is going on, and today you are able to come and join me online. God is still in the throne. God is still working. He has not finished his job in our life. He will continue to do what he has begun in our life. So therefore, whatever you have today in your life, give God the glory. Be grateful to God. Thank God for what you have. Thank God for the family. Thank God for the food. Thank God for the clothes. Thank God for the shelter you have over your head. Be a thankful person, and you will be amazed to see how God begins to bring many other resources for us to live in this world. Be a grateful person. There is a God in heaven who created everything, and he created you and me also. So today's my point of message is to make a decision to live for God. Make a decision to live for God, no matter how difficult, how painful the situation may be. To do that, I will take you into a few Bible passages where we will be able to see how God brings us at a point of testing, not temptation, but a testing. Whether we truly worship God or whether we will go on our own way. There are two areas, two times this decision is much more critical. One, when you have good times, when you have no problem, if you have food and clothes and shelter, you have no material need, your health is fine, your family is doing well. It is at that time we know whether I truly worship God or not. And the other time is when life is so miserable, when things are absolutely out of my control, when life has come to a critical point where I have no food, where I have no shelter, I have nothing in life, life is going nowhere. Will I worship God or will I abandon him? So, in good times and in bad times, we know whether I really believe in God or I am simply carrying along. To do that, let me read 1, 2, 3 passages. First from Joshua chapter 24. In the book of Joshua, Israel had a wonderful time. They had abandoned the 40 years of wilderness wandering. Now they had come into the promised land. They had their own houses and their land, and everything was fine and wonderful. And Joshua, an old man who brought them into the promised land, gives them a serious warning and makes them to choose. He asks them to choose whom they will worship because their life was wonderful. They were at the wonderful time of their life. So let me read Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. Joshua says, "But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." At this time, Joshua was a very old man. He had given all the tribes of Israel their land and their inheritance. They were living in a land flowing with milk and honey. And he says, maybe they began to show some kind of indifference to the things of God. Joshua saw how these people were not so keen in worshiping God, and therefore he said, now you decide. If you think that worshiping God, going to church is a difficult thing, reading the Bible is a difficult thing, praying is a difficult thing, and giving offering to the church is a painful thing, respecting the leaders and ministers and pastors is a hard thing, you choose, you take your time and go whichever way you want. God doesn't need people to worship him. Our God is a sovereign God, creator of heaven and earth. He does not need us to praise him. He's not some kind of a inferior being that needs to be praised and said, how great thou art. In fact, God did not need us at all. But because he loved, we are the expression of his love. The creation that you see is the expression of the love of God. Yet we kicked him out. We rebelled against him. We sinned. We broke all his commandments. We broke his heart. Joshua is telling, if serving God is difficult, you have everything now in life, and you're so powerful, you're rich, and you're famous, and you think going to church is some kind of a nuisance, a kind of a burden, you can go back with what you are worshipping. You can worship your money, you can worship your health, you can worship your previous religious beliefs, you can go wherever you feel comfortable, because God does not necessarily need us to worship him. Yet, Joshua would say, and Moses had tell, but the day you abandon God, don't expect God to protect you. Don't expect God to put a hedge about you. Your enemies will come and attack you and take you as captive. Diseases will come upon you. All kind of curses will fall upon you. Poverty will come upon you, and you will be destroyed. God doesn't need us. We need God. Moses said the same thing. Joshua is telling them today, if you think that worshiping God is a so difficult thing, you choose your way. But know that enemies will come and attack you. Diseases will come and destroy you. Poverty will come and rip you apart. At that time, don't blame God. So why do we worship God? Because we need God. We were created to worship God. Man cannot live without God. Man is made in the image of God. In order to live as a full human being, we need to walk in that image. We need to worship God. So Joshua is telling them to make a mind, to make a decision to worship. He said, as for me and my household, we will serve God. No matter what happens, we will continue to serve God. So during this pandemic time, if you have good times, praise God. Even if you have a bad time, it is time to remember that we are created to worship God. So Joshua is telling, God doesn't need us, but we need God. Matter is in your hand. If you want to worship God, choose today. If you don't want to worship, choose today. You're free to go whichever way you want. Next verse we will read from 1 King chapter 18, verse 21. 1 King chapter 18, verse. There is another time of crisis in the history of Israel, and they had to make a decision even there. Prophet Elijah and King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, they had a huge struggle. The King Ahab was one of the most wicked king in Israel. And they were killing the prophets of God. They were destroying the things of God, and they were going after other gods. And finally, Elijah gives them a choice whether to worship God or whether to worship Baal. And this was a time when Elijah demanded a decision for them. Let me read verse 21. 1 King chapter 18, verse 21. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? There are many times I have seen in the church also, believers are wavering between two opinions. Yes, I know Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven. I know he is the only sacrifice for my sins. But yet, this side also, on that side also. inability to make a decision to follow Christ is not a new thing. It has been there from the beginning. And here people are wavering between two. Shall I worship Yahweh or shall I worship Baal? Shall I go after the God who created the heavens and the earth, or shall I create God in my own way? These were the times of uncertain lifestyle of the Israelites. If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. They did not make up their mind. Elijah gave them the choice to follow God or follow Baal, but people decided nothing. Lack of decision in life is a dangerous habit. If you cannot make a decision, you will always end up in the losing side, and the life will not move forward. Here Elijah wanted to make them a decision, and finally, you know the story. God begins to answer from heaven by fire, and all the prophets of Baal were destroyed, and God showed his glory in Mount Carmel, and then the whole nation of Israel came to God. But it is too late. By then, you will be losing a lot. By the time God begins to demonstrate his glory, his power, his judgment, you would have lost many things. So make up your mind to worship Yahweh before Mount Carmel comes, before the judgment of God comes. Turn from your wicked ways, turn from your sinful ways, turn from your unbelief, turn from your negativity, turn from your disbelief, and come to God and worship God, serve him, and you will see how God would do miracle. Then I will bring you to the New Testament in Matthew's Gospel chapter 6, where Jesus also gives us this choice to make up our mind. Matthew chapter 6 verse 24. In Joshua 15 24:15, Joshua makes a point and saying that today you have everything in life, but you choose whether you will worship God or something else. Elijah made them a choice. He said, we're to make a mind. You want to worship Yahweh, you want to worship Baal. Jesus is making the same kind of choice available for the people. Let me read verse 24. If you read the whole Beatitudes, you will see those choices are quite many there. But let me just read this one. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. In Joshua's time, Israelites could not worship Yahweh and the gods of the Amorites, or the gods that they were worshiping before. In Elijah's time, people could not worship Yahweh and Baal. They had to make up their mind. And in today's world, this is the heart of the matter. It's the decision between God or money, a decision between God and the things of this world. And many a time, so many Christians are falling in this serious danger of going after the things of this world instead of God. We cannot serve two masters. We have to make up our mind whether to worship one or the other. If you're a believer and you're living for the things of this world, you may say, I believe in God, but your lifestyle, your purpose in life, your aim in life, your time you're spending says that you are after the things of this world only. So my brothers and sisters, whom are you worshiping today? If you're in a good times, you need to check your heart and say, whom am I worshiping? If you're in a bad time, even at that time, you need to check and see whom are you worshiping. Are you worshiping Jesus Christ, or are you worshiping something else? You know, in the Bible, there are many, many sins mentioned, but the heart of the matter, all other sins come out of this particular sin that we fail to see sometime in our life, that whom am I worshiping? Am I worshiping God or am I worshiping an idol? Throughout the Bible, God has been very clear that the moment we replace God with something else and start worshiping that thing or person or item, we invite the wrath of God. Wrath of God is reserved for anything else or anyone else that replaces God from our life. Joshua gave them this choice. Elijah gave them the choice. And Jesus Christ is giving us the choice today, that whom are we worshiping? Are we worshiping God or are we worshiping the things of this world? If we are worshiping the things of this world, then life is going to be very difficult in this time of pandemic and suffering. We're going to be bitter and angry and fearful and full of regret sometimes. We're going to be upset with the people who seem to be having no problem and we are living all in problems. We will be in agony when we see no progress coming in our life. But if we worship God, if God is our God, if no idol has replaced him, then whether we go through hunger or thirst, whether we go through nakedness or we go through all kind of shame and suffering and persecution, it will not disturb the inner core of our being. We will go through suffering with confidence. We will go through difficulty with no regrets in life. We will not look back. We will not look left and right. We will look right to the face of Jesus Christ. We'll look to the cross. We'll look to the God who sent Jesus Christ as our sacrifice for the sins of life. And through the narrow gate, through the suffering, through the valley of shadow of death, we will continue to be able to walk if Jesus is God in our life. But if material things are God, then this pandemic is going to test many people's faith. The suffering is going to test many people's faith, and it's going to reveal whether we are worshiping God or we are worshiping money. If we are worshiping God, suffering will not destroy us. But if we are worshiping the things of this world, suffering will destroy us. So, how are you expressing your faith in God during the time of suffering of this pandemic? It's not easy. To worship God is not going to be easy. Definitely, Jesus never promised that life is going to be easy. In fact, he said you will have trouble, you will face persecution, people will harass you, people will persecute. In fact, they will kill you. So much so, you may have to give up your life itself. You will have to sacrifice your life if Jesus is your God. So if Christ is the God, no suffering will be able to intimidate you. No suffering will bring kind of a bitterness in your mouth. You will not curse God. You will not curse people. You will not curse yourself. You will continue to believe God until the point when you have to die also. You will die with a song of praise in your mouth. That much important it is for us to make up our mind whether I'm a Christian or not. Never waver between these two masters. One day you come to Christ, another you go to money. One day you come to Yahweh, another you go to Baal. One day you worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, another you go worship the gods of the Amorites. No way. That kind of a lifestyle is a dangerous territory to be in. That is why in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, Jesus said like this: enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. That's a very scary thing. Only a few find the life-giving narrow gate. Enter through the narrow gate, because there is a wide gate, so comfortable to go. Joshua said, if worshipping God is not comfortable, leave him. And Jesus is telling, Following me is not going to be comfortable, and the gate is very narrow, the path is very difficult, only few will find it. So many people will give up easily the moment there is a small persecution, the moment family threatens. One of the weaknesses of many of our believers I have seen in my life is that they want to come to church, they want to go to heaven, but family is afraid, family is threatening them. If you go to church, if you believe in Christ, I will not give you inheritance. That's the kind of a common thing in our context. Or if you believe this, if you go, I'll do this, I'll do that. Fear of family, a little bit of challenge from the family, immediately we give up our hand. I don't know how to come to church. But if you believe in God and you say, okay, my family, my father, my parent, my brother, my sister, whoever you are, I understand you love me so much. But today I found a God who loved me so much. He died for my sins and I want to go to heaven. And if you disinherit me also, if you don't want to accept me in your family also, I have no choice but to follow him. If you have that kind of a commitment, one day your whole family will follow you. But if you compromise, oh, if I go to church, if I follow Christ, and then my family is going to disinherit me, I cannot lose my property. You're not fit to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. You cannot enjoy it after that life in the kingdom of heaven. You will be always between the two opinions, back and forth, back and forth. Jesus Christ is seeking a committed disciple, those who are willing to lay down their life. In fact, he said, if you want to come after me, you must carry your cross. If you cannot give up your parents or children or wife or husband or property or your life itself, you are not worthy to be my disciple. Following Jesus Christ is not easy, my brothers and sisters. If you think that life will be all like this, someday life will come at a critical point. And at that time, if you followed Christ, there will be a divine hand of God to carry you. But if you have been always wavering between two opinions, that life, we can guarantee your life will be protected. Jesus said, narrow gate will lead you to life, broad gate will lead you to destruction. Binash in Hindi or Nepali. Destruction. You may be living a comfortable life. You may be thinking this way also is fine, that way also is fine. You will come to church, you will go back to your nightclub, you will go back to your friends, you will come to church, you will go back to your drinking. The end is destruction. Life of a Christian is not an easy life. It is a life that demands sacrifice. It's a life that demands commitment. It's a life that demands a strong decision. That is why Joshua had to tell these people into the promised land that if you think that worshiping God is not comfortable, give up. Go back wherever you came from or whatever you want to do. But as for me and my household, we shall serve God. And Elijah said to those people who were following who were following none other, they don't know which way to follow. He said, if Yahweh is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. But they said nothing. Double-mindedness, unable to make a decision, will lead you in destruction. And therefore, Jesus said, you cannot serve two masters. You have to make up your mind whom you will serve. You cannot be a wishful Christian. You cannot wish yourself into the kingdom of heaven. You have to pay the price for it. As make a decision, make a commitment. If you're a committed disciple, then you can go through pandemic or diseases or poverty or sickness or death itself will not threaten you. Nothing can separate us from the love of God, said Paul in Romans chapter 8. I hope you will come to a point of making that commitment to follow Christ no matter what. And I guarantee you, in the same chapter, in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 7, verse 24 on, Jesus said like this, therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with great crash. Destruction. Narrow gate will lead you to life, wide gate will lead you to destruction. A wise man who hears the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ and believes them and puts them into practice, his house is built on the rock. There will come storms of life, and the floods of life and winds of life will come, and every suffering will come, but you will not be destroyed. But if you're a person who is always in the double-mindedness, you listen one day the message here and you listen that day other one, and you try living in two worlds, and when the sufferings of life come, it will crash so terribly and it will be destroyed. So my brothers and sisters, today's worship, I want you to take a moment and think about your decision. If you are having a good time, that is the time to check whether you're worshiping God or you're worshiping your good time. Or if you're having a bad time also, you need to check your heart at that time. If you're a person of gratefulness and gratitude and trust in God, you're worshiping. If you are filled with bitterness, anger and anxiety, fear, and you don't know what to do, you're not worshiping God. These two times reveal what kind of decisions we have made in regard to following God. With that, I will stop here, and God bless you, and thank you for joining me. And let us continue to follow God no matter what. Let us make that decision to enter through the narrow gate. Make that commitment, make that decision to follow Christ, and make that commitment to build your life on the solid foundation, solid rock. And when suffering comes, sadness comes, sorrow comes, or good times come, prosperity comes, you have everything in your life, even then you will not abandon God. You will enjoy the goodness of God in your good times and even in your bad times, because you have made up your mind to worship God no matter what. Amen. God bless you. Let me pray.